Hi, Andrew. I'm a huge fan. I drove up here from Kansas City. I'm not an Iowan, so I'm one of those votes that don't count.
I'm kidding. No, thank you for doing that. Thank you.
So Iowa, please make my vote count one day. So I have a question for you. I'm from the tech industry in particular, and I actually drove up here with a friend who's a huge Elizabeth Warren fan, as am I. And I think the biggest understanding from a Democratic stance is how do we pick one? Because we like so many. And so I'm curious from your perspective, knowing that the majority of that money from a universal income is going to come from the added value tax along with a few other ones, Elizabeth Warren's sort of tactic in terms of handling the economy and the tech industry is to go in and implement some pretty strong antitrust laws, which is awesome. But I'm curious how your plan differs. They both come out with a similar outcome, but I'm just curious how your plan differs from that, knowing that me personally is a choice between you and Elizabeth. So if we're trying to decide between those two things, how does your plan kind of differ in terms of how you handle the technology?
Thank you. It's such a specific question, which I love. First, let me say that I applaud your taste in candidates because I like Elizabeth Warren a great deal. So her approach towards tech in particular, like I felt like it was a little bit of like a set of 20th century approaches to 21st century problems. Because the antitrust laws are very poorly designed for this era, and so it does make sense to try and come up with new tests and measures. But in some of the cases, breaking up the tech companies it wouldn't solve the problem. So I'll give you an example. Facebook and Instagram are very, very popular, and they're among the apps that are causing depression in teenage girls around the country by the data, because teenage girls have these smartphones, teenage boys too, but it's worse for girls. And so if that is a problem you're concerned about, breaking up the corporate ownership of Facebook and Instagram does not actually solve that problem. It's also the case that if you were to break up Amazon into 4 mini Amazons, which is not what she's recommending, that would not magically revive the Main Street economy of various towns. Like, you have to try and look at what the problems you're trying to solve are and go in case by case instead of doing something that, in my opinion, it feels satisfying, but in some cases, it might not be the right solution. One example I use is that none of us wants to use the 4th best navigation app. You know what I mean? Like in the 20th century, you were like, ooh, you should have competition. But in the 21st century economy, there's actually real gains to having one player that has all of the data so that you have like one navigation app you actually trust. You know, like it's a reason why Google has won and we all stopped using Yahoo and Bing and Ask Jeeves and the rest of it. Like, there are actually some benefits to it. And so you don't want to just show up and say, you know what we have to do? We have to turn this into like competition again. Because then you'll probably end up like just in this weird like circular pattern. Because then, given the advantages of data, like there's going to end up being like one winner that consolidates. So what we have to do is we have to look at it and say, look, what are the problems here we're trying to solve? And in some cases, it may include like having these businesses divest parts of themselves, 100%. And I agree with Elizabeth Warren that if you're Amazon, you can't be promoting your Amazon house brand over other companies' goods and then just continuously advantaging yourself and disadvantaging them. Like, I agree. And I think Elizabeth Warren's overall values and spirit and vision are the right ones. Like, I'm on board with like where she's trying to lead the country. I just, on that particular set of policies, I felt like she went a little bit, like, it was both over-inclusive and under-inclusive depending upon the nature of the problems you're trying to address.